It's our great pleasure to welcome to our 2020 Online Trend Summit long-time collaborator and friend of the Food People, Amelia Boothman, Strategy Director at 1HQ, to bring to life the social, the cultural, and I guess the human narrative behind the top trends for 21-22, and how this era of reset is manifesting itself. Amelia, let's talk about some of the forces that are at the root of the food and drink trend manifestation into the near future.
Oh, thank you, Charles. And it's a real pleasure to be here again in this strange time. But it's great to have so many people join us this year. But I'll miss the chats and questions that I often get with you all. So please do send them in as I go through. But it has been an interesting year in terms of trends, and they're being fast-tracked in our times of change. As predicted by Yuval Harari of Sapiens fame, times of crisis speed things up. So let's see what we've got. Right, so the importance of our macrocultural trends. I thought it'd be worthwhile just talking about this before we look at some of them. And so why do we bother with these? Well, the true meaning of a brand or a service comes alive through the visual, verbal, atmospheric, and experiential ways in which it's delivered. And each sign, code, or symbol can tell a different cultural story through the context it puts itself in, from packaging through to service. Take simple hamburger here we see, be it one from Impossible Burger, McDonald's, or a 3-star Michelin restaurant, each has still got that very different value and meaning. And it's these subconscious messages through the pack design, decor, communications, atmosphere, which brings the experience to life. But how do we identify these? So I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we do this, and also some of the background drivers in our culture that affect new emergent contextual codes. So the food people identify and gather the trends and analyse them and their strength across the world. We at 1HQ then take the imagery and the context of these signs, codes and symbols, and unearth the meaning and culture behind them that actually drives these trends. And here we can see, we're going to take you through these big cultural shifting stories today as a bit of interest. But when we work with our clients, we translate these into their unique platforms, and we can then focus down on how to bring those to life in each brand or product's context in an ownable way. As you can see, our big theme this year is Own the Reset, and underneath this are 4 macrocultural trends we'll talk about, and then the 44 drivers that help explain the food and beverage trends we see emerging today. So what are these 44 cultural drivers? Well, each of those 4 macro themes has a number of underlying emotional needs and behaviours that can explain why we desire and want these new foods. Some feel really familiar because they're ever present. Others have emerged more recently. Often, though, they're not completely new, and when we delve into them back into the depths of time, we can actually see this is a cyclical driver repeating itself. These needs and behaviours help us target our brands and products, therefore, more effectively. Let's have a look at that core central driver of the wheel, first of all, and see what's going on there. So, Own the Reset. So post the revolution, which was our centre 2 years ago, there's been a big shift in lifestyle, values and the economy in order to secure the future, our central driver last year. We now see this has driven consumers to make a big shift in their choices and decision making, forcing people to decide how they personally feel and choose to react in times of change. There's also been a reset of responsibilities towards a more self-sufficient and self-contained lifestyle. Last year, we talked about millenarianism, documented by Norman Cohn's belief that the socio-political system needs to be reinvented because it isn't working. We now have heeded our heroes and taken matters into our own hands, aligning ourselves with the tribes that we believe can make the positive change needed to reset. Let's look at our first macro trend underneath this. So return to the family. In the time of crisis and revolution, we've returned home to our close family and reknown how to be together, look after, care for, and enjoy their company, hopefully. The majority have surprised themselves by how we have learned to live in our reduced space. And many opinion polls have shown that we actually prefer many things about being restricted to our homes in lockdown. 85% say they want at least some elements to stay from lockdown, according to YouGov. This has even become something to feel proud of. Now we've learned to live with less in a world where temperance is now valued as a way to help save our planet. So this throws up some questions. Our first is, why has there been a move in food towards happily learning to live with less? So temperance is actually interesting because it's a paradoxical power. So animal behaviour is typically about obtaining and, if possible, monopolising better resources and foods to demonstrate the ability to collect and consume more than rivals, to outcompete them, and to grow the largest physical features possible to prove their fitness. Correspondingly, in the human world, personal power has conventionally been expressed through conspicuous consumption, displays of wealth, accumulation of valuable artifacts, and so on. The aesthetics of asceticism, however, show throughout history there's been a diametrically opposed strand of behaviour and communication, centering on the outright rejection of material accumulation and display. In ancient Sparta, a Spartan existence, among Indian ascetics, and in countless religious figures from Trappist monks to Buddhists, a simple life involving little food or veganism, vegetarianism, celibacy, and rejection of wealth has signified not weakness and failure, but instead personal and spiritual social power. The lockdown has made this ascetic stand more relevant, partly out of necessity, with some faced with fewer options and reduced income, partly based on a desire to actually capitalise on opportunity with more power over our lives, including our diet. Once eating less would have been a sign of failure and low status. Increasingly, it's a mark of a more mature, successful, and wise person. So with authenticity valued as never before, those refusing to engage in wasteful and indulgent behaviours relating to food or other aspects of life are among the most enlightened and powerful. And we see things like diet apps like Noom, intermittent fasting, are growing examples of this. We're entering, therefore, a new phase of rejection of materialism and instead increasing our interest in restraint, minimalism, discipline, through increasing awareness of the ethics of environmental damage and waste. Combined with these factors, we're seeing a surge in interest in foods that involve some level of sacrifice for the common good and/or for the individual seeking more control over their body and life generally. Lockdown has accelerated this tendency that was already happening, as people are having to economise and are also opting to use this crisis as a leverage to improve things. Let's go on to our next big driver, filling the vacuum. So fast changes in revolutionary times have unseated traditional leaders who we no longer trust or value, and this has created a bit of a political vacuum. This vacuum has created space, therefore, for new styles and types of leadership to thrive. Scientists, populism, QAnon. Many businesses, scientists, and celebrities have taken a stance and spoken out in ways they've not dared to in the past, where they feel traditional leadership has been lacking. They've also often taken matters into their own hands to reach out to those in need, or directly correct the perceived wrong with actions to make it right. These are proven to be high-risk gambles that initially might even appear to have failed, but then they've often gathered tribal support, which has then overturned the established status quo. So we then ask the question, why has making food affordable for all come to such prominence, which is one of the elements that comes out from this trend? So food for all is really the oldest altruism, as food and drink has always been the most important aspect of existence. In evolution, the way we obtained food via gathering and hunting had a profound impact on our physical characteristics and the patterns of our social organisation. More than that, the sharing of food and altruism relating to food is the very basis of culture itself. Whereas intelligent apes like chimpanzees are reluctant to share food, human infants as young as 19 months show spontaneous giving of foods to others, despite this depriving themselves of nutrients. In the industrial age, food has always been a microcosm of capitalism's dog-eat-dog reality, and hunger is still a major global issue for billions. The rise of public consciousness of food banks and heightened awareness about the amount of food we throw away, and the promotion of strategies that reduce food waste have brought food into the wider conversation about the downsides of modern life. The system is seen as rigged, and we are now taking matters into our own hands, where politicians, both left and right, have been seen to fail.